Hello and welcome to episode 16 of Belpod, the podcast dedicated to Belarusian football. This week we start with some disappointing news in the international arena and a damning report on political interference in Belarusian football. With Shakhtar close to wrapping up another title, we focus instead on the race for the European places before the arrival in part 2 of a very special guest. We round off as ever with a preview of this weekend's fixtures in the Vysheshaya and Pashaya Ligas, as well as the Druhaya Liga playoff games for our real hardcore Belarusian football enthusiasts. Hello again, and you will remember, regular listeners, that last time we talked about the Belarusian international team, we were reasonably upbeat because they'd had a couple of really close encounters with a couple of very good sides. Not quite so upbeat this time, unfortunately, John, are we?
No, it's a pretty grim international performance from Belarus in both games. Of course, people will point to the fact that several players withdrew due to COVID or other injuries. Manager Kondratsev was obliged to withdraw from the game in Tallinn because he had coronavirus. The performance in Tallinn was okay first half in a largely featureless game, but really, really poor in the second half. They had a nightmare with Onriani and Sorgo up front and the experienced Vasiliev in midfield. And after a clown shoe's first goal, when poor Bordachev fell over in the area and gave the ball away, there was no way back. And then, of course, a quick turnaround. Oleg Radushko, the interim coach, had hardly any training time with the team before the visit of the Czechs. And the Czechs dominated that game from start to finish. It was actually embarrassing how far ahead of the Belarusian team that they were. And they won 2-0, going on 6-0. So a really demoralising and disappointing performance by the international team, indicating some real systemic failures in the managing of that team.
Yeah, I think, as you say, there was a significant disruption in the week leading up to it. And I suppose the Czechs had far more to play for. They still have a chance of qualifying, whereas obviously that particular flame has long since flickered and died for the Belarusian team. I suppose, yeah, for me as well, the biggest disappointment was you would hope that they would be able to not finish bottom of the group. You'd hope that they would at least finish above Estonia. That clearly is very unlikely to happen now. But I suppose it is quite linked to the issue with COVID. It is quite shocking to see that suddenly there seems to be an awareness that COVID is a problem. And I think we'll see perhaps some stadia this week, aren't we? There's been a mandate, hasn't there, that all supporters should wear face masks. So, this is something that clearly affected the national team and is having a wider impact on football in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And for a government like Belarus to introduce mandatory face masks and social distancing measures shows that there's a very, very serious issue with coronavirus in the country at the moment. Deaths in 2020 were significantly underreported in the official figures. Until recently, there was even a denial that coronavirus was the cause of illness for many. But unfortunately, today we've seen that 4 Smorgon players and the new coach, Igor Trukov, are out with COVID for the game against Vitebsk at the weekend. And very sadly, Vladimir Belyavsky and 9 energetic players are reported to be suffering from COVID at the moment. So, of course, we wish Vladimir Ivanovic and the affected guys at Energetic and everyone at Smorgon a speedy recovery, and we hope they're all right.
Indeed. We've talked before or alluded before at the very least to one of the biggest problems with the national team obviously being the political instability in the country. We've seen this week a report that's been released which would hopefully give FIFA and UEFA the kick up the backside to actually start investigating properly what is going on in the country with regard to some fairly shady issues. Would you not agree, John?
You're absolutely right, Liam. And I think a lot of the things mentioned in the report, which has been drawn up by the Belarusian Sports and Solidarity Fund, which is an attempt to unionize professional sport within the country. We're aware of a lot of these issues anecdotally, but there's been no real evidence for them. This report is based on anonymous testimonies from people involved, and it speaks to attempts by Bazanov, the sports minister, Kovalchuk, and Bazanov's deputy Vergachik to influence referees, to offer inducements to referees for ensuring certain results, of turning a blind eye to the indiscretion, shall we say, of certain players, and of direct political interference in the running of football in Belarus from the president's office currently. And all of these things are documented, and evidential testimony is provided. And the report has been provided to UEFA, who, let's not forget, provide the House of Football $10 million a year from UEFA funds for the running of the game. Now, political interference and referee inducement perhaps are the most serious charges in the report, and we will see if there's any reaction from UEFA. They seem very reluctant to make any move in the situation at the moment, so we'll need to see if anything results in the weeks ahead.
To the league, John, we have seen one significant development. I think we all knew that it was pretty much all over by the shouting when we last spoke, that it would have taken a fairly drastic collapse by Shakhtar, which looked possible while Gorenka was still in charge, but we both felt, and in fact a lot of journalists in the country felt, that once Baga took over, things might be settled once and for all. And that's certainly been the case, hasn't it? We've seen a big game and a big victory for Shakhtar at Dinamo in what was really the last chance any team really had of catching clearly the best team in the league so far this season.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think it was very clear that Shakhtar went to Dinamo to win. And I feel that if the previous manager had still been in charge, there'd have been a clown shoe formation and probably a falling out with senior players or frosty relationships, and a determination not to lose, first of all, before working out how to win. And it's very clear that Alexei Baga, who's had a checkered managerial career himself, has come in and very quickly shown the players that he's worthy of respect. And we're beginning to see some of the performances again that we saw under Roman Grigorchuk before he left, when Shakhtar were dominant in the first part of the season. Particularly interesting to see Darbo looking more interested again. I mean, he went really quiet when Gurenko was there. He was on the bench sometimes, but he's back in and amongst it now. And there's no doubt that Shakhtar are going to walk away with the league, which they look like throwing away under Gurenko's brief and ill-fated reign.
Yeah, I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head there, John, didn't you? I mean, I look back to the Bate game, which was a big game, and I could understand why he might have gone there. Gurenko with his team and thought, as long as they don't lose, this will be okay. Different attitude from Baga's team at Dinamo, went out to win the game, absolutely piled forward in the first 20 minutes and essentially settled the game in those 20 minutes, didn't they? So Dinamo got a goal back later on, but I don't think there was any question that Shakhtar were the better side and deserved to win the game. And that has given the impetus that we expected it would give them. So our thoughts now really turn, John, to what is still a very interesting battle now that we've accepted that Shakhtar are going to win it for the last the two European places available. And I think we've got four contenders for these, haven't we? Who do you think, a mini prediction within a prediction, John, we're not going to go back to week one and look at your predictions from then. Who do you think at this stage of the season is going to get the two spaces out of the four teams in contention for them?
Well, one of them will win the game on Saturday between Ruch and Dinamo Minsk. I think that's going to be absolutely critical in determining the top three places. It's hard to see Bata not finishing in the top three now. I don't think they've got a game, I think, away in Moser at the weekend, and I can't see them slipping up there. Although it's not been a happy hunting ground for them in recent times, as we can all remember. And Gomel are really pressuring the top four. They've had some outstanding performances and results in recent weeks, and maybe that goalless draw against a really obdurate Dinamo Brest might come back to haunt them at the end of the season, where they just couldn't score. So Gommel are outsiders for me. So,
yeah, I think the biggest disadvantage for them, I suppose, Goldman, is that this rejuvenated Shakhtar team, they've got to play them twice, haven't they? So once upon a time, it looked like it would be, certainly under Gorenko, as we don't want to keep going with the same thing again, but I certainly would have fancied Shakhtar to go to Gommel and get beaten. And it's the last game of the season, I think, the game in Shakhtar. So I suppose the only hope for Gommel is that by that stage, Shakhtar will be champions almost certainly. And so maybe not that fussed about that last game. They are still outsiders. Like, you don't see it, no? You're not so sure.
Under Alexei Bag, I don't think taking a foot off the gas will be permitted. And don't forget that at such a political club where all the hidden moves behind the scenes determine who is coach and who plays in the first team, I think when players are playing for contract extensions or hoping to engineer a move for themselves away in the close season, they won't want to take their foot off the gas either. Yes, it may be a dead rubber by then, almost certainly it will, but still I think they'll want to end the season on a high.
Indeed. So you think you're going for, well, you haven't just said yet, have you? You said the winner of Rook against Dinamo Minsk. Stop beating around the bush here, Black. Tell me who you think is going to win that game.
I don't know, because, well, this leads us to another point that we mentioned on Twitter the other week, Liam. Have you ever known 4 of the top 5 clubs in a European league to be such an utter shambles in the business end of the season? Okay, Shakhtar have steadied things now. Gommel are anything but a shambles, a really well-run club with a good squad and a very well-respected manager. But the other 3 contenders have all got big issues. Dinamo still under an interim coach, in dispute with an absentee forward, players not being paid what they were promised before the season. You then look at Rook, players not paid for 3 months. Will they even exist next season because their owner's under sanctions? And Bata, of course, with their many, many issues in the last couple of months. So it's a strange old title race this season, I think. And that's why it makes predicting who will finish second and third rather difficult.
But interesting, as you say, if we've lost our champion discussion, we've certainly still got that discussion that's live. And I'm not sure about Bata. You would expect them to get there, but they're not in a fantastic position. And they're not playing fantastically well for me. So so we'll see. But it'll be a fascinating conclusion to the season on that level, even if both at the top and the bottom, we think things are pretty much settled. So that's just about it for the first section of the show tonight. And we will soon be back in a minute with some fairly exciting developments in part 2. So, those of you who have listened to us from the start, or even those of you who've picked us up recently, will know that generally part 2 is reserved for somebody else to talk other than myself and John. And we've had a number of fans who've come on and done a brilliant job at telling us a bit about where their team comes from. And this week, we've got a really exciting development. Thanks very much to, as always, the guys at Isloch, who have done a brilliant job in making this possible for us. We actually, for the first time on BellPod, have managed to secure an interview with a Vyšehradzká Liga player. And obviously a massive thank you also to Daniel Sosa at Isloch, who battled through various technological difficulties, even installed Skype on his phone and set up an account so he could talk to me last week about life at Isloch and his general ambitions and targets for the rest of the season. So sit back and listen to what is for us a first. Daniel, first of all, thank you so very much for agreeing to come on the show. It's an absolute pleasure and a privilege to have a player from a league that we've been following really closely now for about 18 months. It's the first person who's ever been so kind enough to grant us an interview. So thank you so much. I think one thing that's really fascinating to us, to be honest, is the whole process of from the moment you get attention from a Belarusian club. I know there's a few of your teammates, Isloch and other players in the league that have come over from Africa. But I'd love to know how it all happens, really. Obviously, were you in Ghana? Where were you? Was it off season in Togo, or just talk us through exactly how that all started?
Okay, I went to Togo when I finished my season with the team I played in Guinea. So after that, I have to go back to Ghana for vacation. But after that, I moved to a club in Togo. So I spent like a couple like days there. Started to get all my papers and everything. And so I was there, and my agent called me. He said that like he was speaking one of coach in Belarus, and then I have to move to from Togo. And that's how I ended up in Belarus in the FC Slush.
And how long between that initial contact and actually arriving in Belarus? Did you have any time to sort of pack your bags and get ready for it, or was it really very sudden?
I was ready for it, but I was training with the team, and we played like a couple of some friendly match in Togo here before I moved to Belarus.
Tell us what a typical non-match day is like. When do you train, and do you start early, or do you lots of hours of training every day, or is it just an hour in the morning or an hour in the afternoon? Is it all fitness, or is it a lot of work with balls, or what? How does a typical day of training work for you?
Yeah, the training like we work with we do training like 1 hour 30 minutes, I think, or sometimes 2 hours a week. And in training, everything is like great, serious. Everybody is everything. Like everybody is serious. Like coach puts much pressure on the players to concentrate, to have a lot of concentration.
And in terms of the training, obviously, I mean, we've noticed that you've been playing generally as one of the three attacking players behind a sort of a lone striker. So sort of 4-2-3-1 formation that I know is like you've settled into. Is that what you're used to, or are you used to being an out and out striker? Or are you used to being one of the two in a 4-4-2, or are you used to being, the main striker in a 4-2-3-1, or is this a role that you're used to?
Yeah, I prefer to play as a striker, but for me, like the most important thing, like to get good results for the team. For me, that's what's important. I have to be more efficient for the team and get a good results and like 3 points for the team.
Yeah, I mean, you're scoring quite a few goals, aren't you, without being the main striker? So it doesn't seem to be working out too badly for you not being the main striker, which is great. In terms of scoring goals, I mean, have you set yourself any targets? Do you have in your own head a figure that you want? I know you said the team is more important, but is there a certain number of goals you want to score by the end of the season? And just wonder whether Coach Radkoff has also set you any particular targets for the rest of this season.
Yeah, I have a target. I have a target in the team, like 50 matches. So as a striker, the maximum was supposed to score like 8 or 9 goals in 50 matches. I think it will be okay for me. And the coach also have a target. We have to, we cannot be first, we cannot be second, but we have to make the team into the top six also. And yeah, it's good. And coach also pushing us more to be at the top six, especially also pushing me like since I came, supposed to be more concentrate on my target, more focus, give 100% at training, 100% in March, so that I can get my target because it's like
I was really interested with the interview you gave with the website. You were asked if you want to use Islodge as a kind of a stepping stone to a bigger club. It was very interesting that you felt that you don't necessarily want to be moving around all the time, and I'm sure that the Islodge fans will be delighted to hear that because you've made such a great start. It's great to know that you're thinking a bit more long term in terms of being in Belarus. And you said that the standard of football is the highest at which you've played so far. Is the style of football very different from what you're used to as well? Are there a lot of differences in terms of how the matches are compared to being in Africa?
Yeah, it's very different. It's very different. And this is the highest league that I'm playing now. But this is my first professional contract. I've moved to Israel in 2016, 2017. But it was like I played in the youth under 19 division. But Belarus is my first Premier League contract. Yeah. So then it's very different from Africa. It's not like the way we used to play in Africa, because every game is very intensive, everything. And I love it so much. They can improve us. Most of my players, African players who join, improve us a lot.
You touched on any of the other African players at the other clubs. Obviously, I've been a big fan of Yamusa at Smorgon this season, Yamusa Kamara, and obviously you've got Ivan alongside you. Do you keep in touch? I mean, and we also loved and really enjoyed David Tway over the last 12 months as well. Are you all in contact with each other? Because it's obviously you are all a long way from home, and the language must be an issue as well.
I know Yamusa from Guinea. We play in the same league, but in different team, but I know him. He also know me very well. And the one go again. I know him in Belarus.
Interesting. Really interesting. Obviously you're currently in Algeria. You've got sort of a couple of very big matches coming up, haven't you? And you've chosen to play for Niger. Looking at the world rankings, I noticed that Benin was one of your other options, but actually Niger are ranked quite a long way below. I think about 30 places below Benin, aren't they? So just talk us through why you decided to choose Niger rather than Benin, which is obviously the country of your father's birthplace.
Yeah, I was in Guinea, and Benin started to and I told them my father came for them, so I got a lot of interview. Niger also was also giving pressure, because I have a great season in Niger with 25 points, 23 goals. They love me, like people who know me already know me. So, and some of the players also know me, like they always contact me. They need a striker, they wanted me to come, So I decided to take that decision because I cannot wait anymore. They didn't come for me, but Niger saw my talent and they wanted me to come and help them. So I was grateful for Niger. They called me, and after I came, the people were happy, the fans were happy, they were really happy to see me. It's great. It's great to be in people who already know you. I think it's okay for me. It's good, and I think I have a family now. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure for this weekend, especially, we're all going to become Niger fans. We're really hoping that you get some game time, because obviously Algeria is one of the biggest teams in Africa, isn't it? So that's a massive place. Would be an amazing place to make your debut for Niger. So very best of luck with that, Daniel. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. It's really much appreciated.
You're welcome.
And we wish you all the best for the rest of the season. We hope that you'll be at Isloch for a long time to come.
Thank you.
Daniel, I thank you at the start, and I'll thank you at the end as well. It's just such a fantastic job for you to come to us and to talk to us about life in the Vistara Liga. We love this league so much, and we've waited so long to have a little bit of insight into what it's like. Obviously, Coach Radkov has also done so we can't thank the guys at Isloch enough for giving us the kind of access that we've dreamed about, really, from the day we started doing this. So thank you to you. But fascinating for me. I love the fact, John, he kept talking about concentration. The coach tells me to concentration. I always think about the Coach Radkov as being a very focused individual, and it's clear that he is.
Absolutely, and he's getting results with Daniel. I mean, 4 goals and 9 starts for Isloch, and he's really made a difference there. It's been a very impressive start at the club for him. But you're in danger of becoming a paid employee of Isloch, having interviewed Artem Alexandrovich earlier this season. So, joking aside, it's wonderful to hear that interview, and a very promising young player, and giving a bit of an insight into what it's like to play in the Belarusian league. And of course, we have to congratulate him on a successful international debut for Niger, which you saw highlights of, I believe, Liam.
Not only did he make his debut, Johnny scored on his debut, quite incredibly. I mean, listen, let's look at this in context. Niger ranked 112th, I think, under the FIFA rankings. Algeria ranked 4th. I looked at the team lineup, so obviously the only name I recognised on the Niger side was Daniel. And then I looked at the Algerian lineup. So we had Riyad Mahrez in there, Saïd Benrahma, Slimani, who was once at Leicester City, Feghouli, I think he's playing at Lyon at the moment. I was like, wow. And this guy, in that interview, if you heard clearly, this is his first professional contract, John. He's in July, he's arrived in Belarus. Anyway, we've talked in the past, haven't we, about the Legionnaires and about these guys not getting a chance. What an amazing story that is. First professional contract, 3 months later, he's playing against the number 4 ranked team in Africa. Just incredible.
Absolutely. And I think in another programme, we really need to invite someone on to sit with us and talk about the impact that African players have had in Belarus. But it's really good to have that insight. I remember there was an article in Tribuna earlier in the season where individuals like Godfrey Stephen would come on reasonable salaries with a bit of professional experience behind them. But a guy like Daniel, for his first professional contract, is really quite an inspiring story. And I think it's more typical of the African players that come to Belarus. It is their first time being paid. A lot of them are paid very, very little, and they work really hard in Belarus in order to get a move to a league with more money in other countries, and obviously help their Belarusian club whilst they're there. So, I mean, it's been an amazing few months for the young man, and long may it continue.
And I have to say, without wishing to bang these Dutch John for too much longer, they were absolutely brilliant the last time I saw them against Vitebsk. So we won't say too much about that, but they absolutely played Vitebsk off the park. And I was thinking, this is an amazing performance. And I had a look at the league table and realised that they, as Daniel alluded to there, they fancy top six. And I have to say, if he takes that lot to top six, that's a fantastic achievement from a very, very young team. And it's what we were saying before, wasn't it? We feel like, this team will grow and get better and better. And that was a standout performance. So they've got a tough run in, but I wouldn't bet against them for a top six.
I absolutely agree with you. That's one of the best individual team performances I've seen this year, that display up at Vitebsk. And as you rightly point out, Vitebsk didn't even qualify for the Gubbins Village Outfit title that day. They were abysmal. That's probably the worst Vitebsk performance I've ever seen. But Isloch took full advantage, extremely well organised and clearly extremely motivated. And like you say, if Vitebsk are that indifferent to finishing sixth, then who wouldn't bet on Isloch taking that space from them, and on that showing deservedly so.
So, splendid stuff. Really enjoyed that so much. Let's hope it's not the first, not the first. Let's hope it's not the last time we get to speak to a player who's actually out there doing it. It's very exciting. But we'll now move on, as always, from part two to the logical progression from part two, which is part three. So here we are again, part three. Just a few seconds later, makes all the difference. And we're going to talk, as always, in part three about what's coming up. Now, we've made a couple of mentions of that, and John sat on the fence as far as Rook and Dinamo are concerned. I haven't obviously given my opinion, so I can just have a moan at him, despite having said anything, not said anything myself on that subject. So anything else, though, John, from the list of fixtures this weekend that stand out to you? Notice there's no Friday games this week. It's all happening on Saturday and Sunday, isn't it?
Yeah, and of course, with so many of us amongst the listeners back at football games in the UK, the Saturday games are pretty much out the window, aren't they? Which is a shame, because it means you have to catch them up in the highlights. And one of them I'd really like to see this weekend, which fortunately is on Sunday morning, whilst all you God-fearing people are at church, of course, is at 11 o'clock in the morning between Minsk and Gomel. What do you think of that one, Liam?
Oh, I have to say, 3 or 4 weeks ago, the thought of sitting through 90 minutes of FC Minsk did not appeal at all. But I did see the last game, because obviously I like to watch Dinamo Brest. I'm not sure if I've ever mentioned this, John, but the atmosphere at Dinamo Brest, it's just amazing.
Oh, you've never mentioned that before.
Not at all, never, ever. No, to be fair, sadly, it has slightly fallen off recently, and it was a bit sad, to be honest, to see. I suppose their season has tailed off, and so is their support. Yeah. It's got cold, and as you say, COVID is increasingly a concern for people, as is lack of money. So yeah, it was a bit of an anticlimax on that level, but I think it was partly a bit quiet for a lot of the game, because Minsk were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Obviously, Skripchenko has taken over again there, having had a great spell in the last season. They look like a completely different side. They just went at it. They drew 2-2, but they should have won the game. Dinamo Brest, I thought, were lucky to get a point, although probably I haven't gone to 2-2. They might have won it. But yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about that game, because I think that Gomel, as we know, are not the best defensively, and FC Minsk appear to be prepared to play now under Skripchenko as if they haven't a care in the world, and long may that continue.
Yeah, I think, now we've bigged that game up to be a sclaffy 0-0 and terrible and driving rain. So if it's a bad game, don't blame us.
So those are our two standard games, obviously, in the Vysheshaya. Always supposed they'll go ahead, because maybe, but we don't really think that's going to happen, do we? Obviously, and I guess it will just be forced to play, despite the fact 9 players can't. We're looking also at the Pashaya, aren't we? Because we know that Slavia are odds on now to be the relegation playoff team from the Vysheshaya. But who do you think might they be playing? And there's a game this weekend that might have a lot to say about that.
Well, yes. I mean, much like the Ruch Dinamo game in the top flight is going to pretty much determine which of them finish in the top 3. The Krumkachi Belshina Bobrus game at the Olympsky Stadium in Minsk is an absolutely massive game. I think both teams have been pretty inconsistent recently. Belarusian have been a bit binary, winning one, losing one in the last few weeks. Krumkach had a real wobble about a month, 6 weeks ago. But they seem to have stabilised a bit and they're grinding out results now. There was another narrow odd goal and 5 victory against Baranovici last time out. Whereas Belshina were taking care of Gubbins back markers, Slonim 4-0. So I think both teams are going in the back of a win. It's going to be a really cagey game. I think whoever wins that's going up automatically, and I think whoever loses is not necessarily guaranteed the playoff place because Dnepr, Mogilev are sort of beginning to really shape up a bit.
Yeah, they drew at Naftan last time. Though I think drawing at Naftan is again, Naftan not a bad side. Naftan aren't far behind, but I think those are the kind of games you need to go and win. I think Dnepr are sort of just not quite getting there. They are better definitely, but I think probably the top three at the moment is going to be the top three. I'm not sure which way around Belshina and Krumkach will be. I think we'd be fairly confident, can't we, that Arsenal are going to win it, which is nice in a way because obviously they did have the chance to go up last season, by foul rather than fair means, and they refused it and decided they'd try and get that promotion on the field.
But then, of course, Liam, we're coming back to governance, and without going on about that, the Bazanov and the BFF have introduced a rule where $1 million bond has to be provided for private clubs, as well as some letter from the local authority saying that the local authority will underwrite the club's existence in the top flight for all the things they need to do. Now, Krumkach are trying to push back against this, but I don't think they have any agency to. Arsenal have been very silent on the matter, and we know that Arsenal are funded by a collection of businessmen, some of them abroad, and we don't know yet whether they're going to provide this bond or not. So in the event that the two private clubs don't stump up the cash, then who knows? It could yet be Belshina and Dnepr going up as the state-run teams.
That's a very good point, actually, John. I hadn't thought of that yet. I'd forgotten about our $1 million bond. So we'll see what happens with that. One final mention before we go, briefly about the Druzhaya Liga playoffs for the real diehard Belarusian enthusiasts out there.
Without running through them point by point, which will induce probably even the most insomniac listener to loud snoring. I think the one result that really stood out for me in the quarterfinals, Liam, or the eighth final, was Molodechno going down in flames on penalties against BGU Minsk. And Molodechno were a team you really expected to make progress and probably end up in the second tier next season, but they do have an awful habit of choking in important games. And in the draw now, the two best remaining teams, in my opinion, who are Ostrovets and Malarita, face off against one another. So you're going to have a situation created by the regional circus, whereby at least a couple of teams that would have a really good chance of promotion, where it's an ordinary countrywide league, are going to be at that level yet again next season. I would expect Ostrovets to come out on top, and of the other ties, I'd expect probably BK Maxline, another private team, Dnepr Uni, Dnepr Mogilev's feeder team, to go through. The tight one is a Sipovici against Stenla's Pinsk. Stenla's another private team. We'll see how that one plays out.
Indeed we will. And we'll see if they bring in maybe a $500,000 bond, if you want to go in.
$1 million bond, yes. Absolutely. And, it's a real mess, that whole scenario. But it will be interesting to see who the final four teams are, who will have the opportunity to progress to the second tier next season.
So players still to look forward to this weekend. We'll be back again, of course, in 2 or 3 weeks. In the meantime, take good care of yourselves, and thanks a lot for listening, as always.
Yes, thank you very much, and see you next time.